So I'm going to just quick do the introduction again. So hi, my name is Nicole, and I am an IBD research coordinator. And tonight we have our first IBD Success Stories event. And we have Alice, Bree, Dylan, and Natalie joining us tonight. And we are very lucky to have them share their experiences with their IBD and what they have been doing in their lives. Okay. So first, just get to know a little bit about yourselves. If you can share some information about your background and about the time you were diagnosed. For example, share about like the age you were diagnosed, what were you doing in your life? Do you have Crohn's? Do you have colitis? How long did it take you to be diagnosed after you started experiencing symptoms? Did you know anyone else with IBD when you were diagnosed? And how did you react when you were diagnosed? And so we'll start with Bree.
Hi everyone, I'm Bree. I have Crohn's disease and I was diagnosed when I was 16 years old and I was a junior in high school. It took about 9 months for my doctors to properly diagnose me after I started exhibiting symptoms. At the time, I did not know anyone who was living with IBD. My mom has a mild to moderate case of colitis, but she doesn't receive treatment. So it's gone dormant, but I don't have anybody close to me that's really affected by it. And how did I react when I was diagnosed? I was nervous, also very scared because I didn't have a sense of community or support from people who were also experiencing IBD symptoms. But I did have a lot of faith and trust in the medical professionals that were taking care of me, so that gave me a lot of assurance.
Thank you, Bree. And then Natalie, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I was also diagnosed at 16. And so Bree and I actually have a similar story at the beginning. It took a couple months, and it was kind of unique for me because my brother actually has ulcerative colitis, which I'm really open about. And we're the only two in our family to have IBD. So it was kind of strange because we went through this experience together, but he was diagnosed a couple years earlier than I was, and he was a lot older too. So there was that kind of like weird like feeling of like not exactly being alone, but also being isolated. And I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And how did I react? I think I was really scared at first because with him it was severe colitis and he almost lost his life, and that was really scary for me because I was just starting middle school and I didn't know anything about IBD. So years later in high school when I found out I had it, my head just immediately went worst case scenario. And yeah, that was my experience.
And then Dylan. Thank you, Natalie.
Hello, my name is Dylan Cook. I'm currently 27 years old. I was actually diagnosed at 16 in high school as a junior, enrolled in a bunch of AP classes. I went undiagnosed for about 6 months. And then as soon as I got diagnosed, stress was through the roof and I was having crazy symptoms. So I had to drop out of all my AP classes and go down to the normal level, which was perfectly fine with me. Most of my family has IBD, so I'm actually Nicole's cousin. So I'd say about half of us cousins have it. And I didn't really know how to react when I was diagnosed. I was the second one in my family to get diagnosed. And yeah, I had a strong support group in my family and everything. And I was actually a Stanford patient. So I know that they treated me really well. So yeah.
Thank you, Dylan. And then Alice.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alice, and I am also 27. Quick disclaimer, I am in a vehicle right now, if it wasn't obvious. I am a professional musician, and I have a recording session right after this. So I am fully here, though. I am with you 100% and happy to be here. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2019 when I was 24. Excuse me. But I struggled with symptoms for close to 10 years before that and was undiagnosed for a very long time. It took me ending up in the hospital my first year of graduate school with another autoimmune condition called undifferentiated connective tissue disease to sort of get the ball rolling. I started seeing some IBD specialists and was diagnosed with indeterminate colitis. And then eventually I moved back to Los Angeles, where I'm from originally, started my career, and my symptoms flared up so badly that I was actually able to be diagnosed. So at that point, my initial reaction upon diagnosis was actually incredible relief, because I've been struggling for so long and was trying to find answers. And so to be able to be given a diagnosis, even a lifelong one, provided a sense of relief, because I knew I could start to get proper treatment. So surprisingly, I was happy about the diagnosis in a really weird way. Oh, and I didn't know anybody else. I'm sorry. Nobody else in my family has any sort of autoimmune conditions. But since I was diagnosed, I've realized that there actually are a lot of people in my life that have IBD that I didn't know about, that through my process of sharing about it openly, I've managed to connect with them and realize that I knew people who had both Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis and didn't realize it before.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, everyone. And thank you, Alice, for being here in your car and still being able to be a part of tonight. And then before we move on, I just wanted to let everyone know that's here is that you can put questions in the chat, or you can put questions in the Q&A, and I'll try to go through those to ask to our panelists. And we will also have time at the end, hopefully, to ask some more questions. And then can you guys describe some of your experiences with your disease management? And this could be related to medications, different treatments you've tried, or diets, and or IBD related surgeries, if any of you have had one. And then whoever would like to answer first may go ahead.
All right, I guess I'll answer first. So I initially started on prednisone, and that was kind of, like I said, I was having pretty serious stomach cramping. I was eating like one meal a day and couldn't even keep it down. So on prednisone as a steroid, and then methotrexate as well, and folic acid. I actually recently, within the past year, got off methotrexate, so I was on it for about 10 years, and I'm taking Humira now as a shot every 2 weeks. So, and I would say that both of them have been effective. My symptoms have definitely gotten a lot better. Definitely still under stress. You know, it can still definitely flare up here and there. I think that's kind of, you know, for all of us, we all have flare-ups every now and then. And yeah, and with, like I said, changing to Humira, there hasn't really been a significant change in my life. Just easier not having to take pills every day. You know, it's one shot every 2 weeks. So yeah, that's kind of how my experience has been with my management. So.
Yeah, I'd love to share next. I've had a very unfortunate experience with medications. I think I've been on, I've got to say like close to 10, maybe more within 3 years, which is very, it's a lot. I first was on Humira, and while it did work for like maybe the first 4 weeks, it just kind of went downhill, and then I'd get really good again, and then it would just be stable, and I just went off of it eventually. And then I kind of switched between things to treat my joint pain, like sulfasalazine, and eventually my Crohn's, it just got so bad again, I had to be on prednisone, and I really didn't like prednisone. I think that's a really common experience for a lot of people with IBD. But yeah, it just made me unable to sleep all the time, and it was just horrible. And then I was also on 6-MP, and then I went to Remicade, which I found out I'm allergic to after a severe allergic reaction. So it was just horrible. Like, all these medications just hated me for some reason. I'm on Entyvio, and I didn't even include like the little ones in between. And I really didn't like Entyvio either at first, so I think I just got unlucky. But I really like sharing about that though, because I I think it's nice to hear that some medications, they just don't work on the first go. And that's okay, because there's always something, like there's never been like a backup. So it's really comforting, or was comforting for me to know, like, hey, if this doesn't end up working out, I have like this whole like other truck of medications to try out. And now I think I'm in a stable place finally.
Thank you for sharing.
I think that's such a great point, Natalie. It's actually incredible how many new medications there are for IBD now, and it's really nice to know that if and when one fails, we do have like a long list to fall back on. I think maybe the most newly diagnosed of the group. I haven't been receiving treatment for more than just a few years now. Initially, I was prescribed oral mesalamine as well as Entyvio infusions, I'm sorry, which for a few months worked for me. And then I had to increase my dosage to infusions every 4 weeks, add in mesalamine rectal suppositories. Then I had to add in steroid rectal foam. And then at the end of last year, just 6 months ago, I had the worst flare I've had. Entyvio stopped working for me. I got really, really sick. Lost a bunch of weight, was getting up, every half hour in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. It was horrible. And so I ended up transitioning to Remicade, as well as a high dose of prednisone. And so I've been on Remicade infusions for just a couple of months now, and feel the best I've felt probably in 10 years, which is amazing and really exciting. So I haven't had any like official diagnostics. I had some blood work and calprotectin tests done recently, and everything came back normal, which is super exciting. Haven't had a colonoscopy in a while, so we'll see. But so far I'm doing really well, and I'm just really grateful. And I also wanted to mention, I initially, after I was diagnosed, I altered my diet completely. So I stuck to a paleo diet for almost 2 years and avoided inflammatory foods, and also got into regular exercise. And both of those things have really helped me in managing my symptoms. They haven't necessarily prevented flare-ups, obviously, but they do help me to feel better on a day-to-day basis. And I think that that's diet and lifestyle changes are a really big part of IBD disease management, in my opinion.
And then I've been on Remicade for the last like 7.5 years, and it's the only medication I've ever been on. So, knock on wood, it's been helping me keep my symptoms at bay. However, I've had multiple surgeries since I was diagnosed. So 2 months after I was diagnosed in 2013, I had a major bowel resective surgery, removing inflamed pieces of my colon and intestine. And then just recently, last year, I had an infection, an anal fistula surgery, super fun, and required 2 surgeries last year and a possible another one in June. But as far as the medication goes, I get Remicade infusions every 6 weeks. And although I do get inconsistent flare-ups, some minor pain, it's been generally effective for me. So I'm happy with it so far.
Bree, do you have any like tips for any of our patients who may be undergoing a surgery, like how you have coped with it?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I'm a curious person and I love asking questions. And so I think having a very open relationship with your surgeon is very key before any major surgery. I ask him to just not sugarcoat it and just tell me in layman's term what I can expect, what the surgery means to me. If that means literally my doctor surgeon drawing a picture for me to understand what's going to be going on in the actual operating room, so I can comprehend it to my ability and understand how that's going to be affecting my body, I think is the most important, just to prepare you. And then just having maybe 1 or 2 close friends in on the secret. I always call my Crohn's my secret, but in on what you're experiencing so that you're not going through it alone. Because I don't need the whole world to know that I'm having an anal fistula surgery. but having one or two friends and obviously close family there for me really helped me during that time.
Thank you for opening up about that.
Yeah, I was going to say I wanted to address something else which I didn't mention earlier in my introduction, but before I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, I was actually diagnosed with a milk protein allergy, and that and then I treated that with a diet, and I was basically just eating like mush, like chicken and carrot and potato mush every day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I remember how much I hated it. And that's probably like the healthiest I've ever eaten in my life. So when I had my Crohn's, like I remember when I got diagnosed, the first thing I asked my doctor was like, if I do this medication, like, can I eat like whatever I want? And I remember because my mom was just like looking in the corner, like in disappointment. And then I just went like crazy. Like I just ate like whatever, and sometimes, you know, I think diet works for some people. Like I've tried the liquid diet. I've tried to eat like, you know, like the mushed up like vegetables and like the boiled everything. I hate it. It doesn't work for me. It just makes me flare up more. So sometimes I do have to resort to the Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, and it works better for me. So I just think like adding that, it's like if diet works for you, that's awesome. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. Yeah, just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Yeah, and then for any of the patients, families on this call, if you have questions about medications or diets, just make sure you consult your doctor about any changes you may want. Okay, and then we'll go on to the next question. Okay, and then how has IBD most impacted your physical or mental health? I know some of this has already been touched on with the previous question, but if there's anything you want to add, please feel free to do so.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dylan. I guess I mentioned it a little bit, but just to elaborate, for me, I went from a person who was a classical musician who never exercised or did much of anything outside of playing the viola every single day, to really valuing fitness and valuing taking care of my body. And I think when I was diagnosed, I felt like I needed to take control of the things that I could control because I couldn't control what was happening with my body. So I decided to take an active role in trying to strengthen it. And I will say that there have been many moments where I haven't been able to exercise because of disease activity or flare-ups. And that's perfectly okay. But in the moments where I feel good, the changes I've seen in my body have actually been for the better, excluding those moments of flare-ups where I've dropped 20 pounds and don't recognize myself. It's motivated me to really prioritize my fitness and strengthen my body. And so I don't know, I feel like I'm sort of twisting the question a little bit and saying that it's like a positive change for me. But I don't think I would be in the physical shape or be as strong as I am right now if I hadn't been diagnosed with IBD, if that makes any sense.
I know for myself, I ran a marathon last year, and part of my reason for wanting to run the marathon was because of having IBD. And I was like, you know what, when I'm able to do this marathon, I should do it because I'd never know what 10, 20 years will be like for me from now.
All right, I guess I'll go next. So like I said, I was 16 when I got diagnosed, and I was, you know, baseball was pretty much my life in high school. And some of you may have read the bios. You know, I played for the Dodgers for a season as well. And actually with the Dodgers, we pretty much ate an all organic diet. So we had pretty much meat, steak, you know, chicken, steak, and veggies every single day for, you know, lunch and dinner. And then for breakfast, we had eggs. And eating that clean diet really showed me and gave me the energy that I really didn't realize you could get from food. So kind of since then, I've been, this was probably about 6 years ago now, I've been eating pretty healthy. And I work out probably 5-6 days a week. It's more of like a kind of a stress relief for me. So like I said, stress is, you know, kind of how it makes me flare up. So yeah, I'd say just eating healthy and working out's definitely, you know, helps me physically, but more mentally as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah, I wanted to add really quickly. Sorry, Nicole. Yeah, no, you're fine. I wanted to just mention, I think I feel like I'm like the rare case, like sometimes in a lot of situations with IBD because I deal of joint pain. So when I was first diagnosed, like I was in the cross country team and the track team in high school, and I loved it. And I really wanted to do that in college because I loved discipline. But then after like my freshman year, like my symptoms slowly started appearing, and obviously like I just like got like worse and worse, and I couldn't really do the things I wanted to do anymore. But this was in my senior year, I really discovered how much I loved yoga because it was really like light it was really light like on my muscles. It wasn't really painful because it's you can like kind of like turn into whatever you want because it's your own practice. And in my opinion, I kind of think it's like a physical and mental exercise. So that's just like something that has always been personal to me. And I think it's important to know, like, if you can't do like certain like physical exercises, again, like you can like always like switch it out for something that accommodates you and your symptoms.
Yeah, I just want to jump in real quick and just say that when I started like exercising, it was 15 minutes of yoga 3 times a week. And so it transitioned into something more intense, I guess, although yoga is very intense. But my very first like physical exercise at all when I was just diagnosed coming out of a flare was like super gentle yoga, and I slowly kind of strengthened my body and got into more cardio based exercises and then weight training. And so I do a little bit of everything, but that's so great to point out, Natalie.
Thank you. And then how have you guys coped with missing out on certain experiences, like due to IBD symptoms that you may have been experiencing? Like, how do you like cope with like saying no to friends if they're like going out to a dinner and you can't go? Just kind of around the, I guess, like fear of missing out, and how do you experience that?
I feel like I didn't cope with it when I was in high school. I was so angry and bitter at everyone because I just wanted to do so many things. And the fact that I couldn't, it just made me like turn into like, I don't know, like I was just like in my own bubble for a long time. And looking back, it's like, dang, like I wish I had spoken to someone because I didn't really tell anyone I had IBD for a really long time. And so like my friends, they didn't understand what was going on with me because I didn't say anything because I was kind of embarrassed about it and ashamed. And then eventually like I found like the best coping mechanism was open up. And if there were certain things that bothered me, then I would just say that they bothered me. I feel like something that IBD has taught me is that oftentimes like we think people are going to be really like judgmental and stuff, but most of the time it's because they don't understand. And just by telling them and explaining them things that are okay and that are not okay to say, or ways that like what like certain things you can do versus can't do, it really like changes your relationship. So I feel like that's like the best like coping mechanism, is to try to open up about things that you're comfortable with, so that your friends and your loved ones can kind of get like a little bit of sense of what you're going through.
And Natalie, do you have any like tips that you would say for people who may not know how to bring up in a conversation about like sharing they have IBD, like how for kids to tell that their friends or classmates about what they're going through?
Yeah, that's a really good question, especially because I don't know what it's like to have IBD at an even younger age, obviously, than 16. So it's probably a lot different if you're in elementary school or middle school. I can't imagine having IBD in middle school, but like if I were in that situation, most of the time I always started off with people that I knew like a lot about me, or like knew like personal things, and then from there on out, like I kind of like branched out. But I always said, kind of like the most like simple definition of like, this is what IBD is, and that, it's kind of like this umbrella. And then there's like two variations, but sometimes there's like a lot of other variations. And then you kind of can ask the person like, what are your questions, or what do you think about this? And then you can just have a conversation with that person and keep it really like friendly. Sometimes it's like hard because, people make like certain comments and it's like, what do I say to that? But then just like clarifying like, oh yeah, this is what I experience. And then, making sure to say like, no, this is what, like, there's actually no like cause to IBD, and just like things like that, like clarifying that information and just kind of, making it like a space for that person to ask questions. I feel like always starting off more general and then answering the questions that that person may have. I feel like that's kind of the best way to go.
Thanks, Natalie.
I was just going to say that I've been very fortunate that I haven't had to miss out on much because of my IBD. That being said, my worst IBD flare happened in a pandemic when I wasn't working. So 6 months ago, I certainly would not be sitting in my car outside a recording session, let alone have been able to even make it to the studio. So what I will say is what Natalie kind of touched on a little bit, in that being open, I think, is the number one thing you can do if you feel comfortable. And after you share whatever you would like to share, to the extent that you'd like to share it with the people in your life, if it is not received well, I would argue that those people don't deserve to be in your life. And if friends don't understand that you have to cancel plans, maybe they aren't the type of friends that deserve you. And I know that that's maybe a little harsh to say, but in my experience, not a single person has ever negatively reacted to me having to cancel something or say, you know what, I didn't sleep well, I'm really, really tired, I'm not feeling good, can we reschedule? And no one's ever made me feel bad about that, I guess is just what I would say.
Thanks, Alice. Okay, and then so going more into about where you are in your education or careers, like how has your IBD diagnosis influenced your choice of college, your college major, any educational career goals that you have for yourselves?
I can start off with this one. So I chose to go to the University of Redlands, where I went into Cole, which is a very small private liberal arts college in Southern California. And it's known for its Disability and Student Services Center. If I recall, I think over 30% of the student population had some type of documented accommodations on file with the center. So I felt at home and open going to the director months before my first semester freshman year to set up accommodations. And so that's why I was drawn to Redlands, especially too, because of the tension with the small class sizes, knowing that I would have that type of close relationship with my professor, and they would be understanding of my IBD and any accommodations that I needed to receive. And as far as affecting my career goals, I want to pursue a career in international education and study abroad or higher ed. And I was able to study abroad 3 times in college. With IBD, it was definitely something nerve-wracking, and I didn't know how I was going to accomplish it, especially with the logistics of setting up my infusions abroad, communicating with a Spanish colorectal surgeon and gastroenterologist in Spanish about my prior history and about my specific needs for infusions. Having said that, I was able to study abroad 3 times, and it was an amazing experience. So in the future, I want to pursue a position as a disability coordinator for study abroad programs to work in student life. So when students do need accommodations, need treatments abroad, I can kind of be that coordinator person to make sure that they receive them, make sure that they have support. So yeah.
Yeah, I think something that's really interesting that how my IBD diagnosis influenced my choice of college. I really don't feel like I would have gone to Stanford if I had not have Crohn's disease, which is weird because whenever I tell people that, they're really like confused, surprised, and like, that doesn't make sense. Like, but you're sick. Like, how can you do that? And I really always like to argue that, with IBD, like anything is truly possible. Like I always love to share, like, you hear about like these schools having like crazy, like small statistics, but I feel like people with IBD, they have these amazing, unique stories that really can make like any kind of like dream or any kind of aspiration that you might have possible. So that's something like I always stress, especially for people who are younger and have IBD, that they should not stay away from like a certain like dream or a certain college because it might seem scary because of like your disability. And if you choose a college that you will feel more comfortable, then that's amazing too. I think it's just like it's totally up to you, but that whole point that it is up to you, it is your life, so you can decide what you want to do with your life. Yeah.
So I'm a professional musician, if some people jumped on late. And I have been studying violin initially when I was 8 years old, and then I switched to viola when I was 13, classically, for most of my life. And it's a very high stress situation. And very recently, actually, in the midst of my latest really bad flare-up, I started to question whether I could physically handle just the lifestyle that I had been living, which frankly up to the pandemic was not super healthy for me. Like Dylan, stress is the number one trigger for me. All of my significant flare-ups of either of my autoimmune conditions have happened at pivotal moments, either in my schooling where I moved or in my career. So I guess my answer to the question is that I'm still trying to figure out if I can do what I've always wanted to do because of IBD. I don't know that I can, but I don't know that that means you can't. I just think that I'm realizing because of IBD, I've prioritized my health because I have to. And so my career is no longer my number one priority. I am my number one priority. And so I am reflecting on the decisions I've made and looking to see if there's maybe a situation that is healthier for me in the long run, that ultimately I think will be right for me. So all of my questions have been so backwards, I feel like, to these are all of my answers. But I guess just, I don't think it has to hold you back, but I think it has the potential to change you for the better, or change your choices for the better. Like Natalie saying she wouldn't go to be at Stanford without it. I wouldn't be the person I am without the experiences I've gone through and the decisions I've made. And I'm really happy with who I am.
Yeah, so my diagnosis didn't really change my choice of college. I was more going to college for baseball, like I said before. And I was a psychology major in college, kind of just wanting to get through college, not really knowing what I wanted to do after baseball. And I knew I couldn't sit behind a desk. So, after I figured out, baseball may not have been, my career path, I wanted to ride along with the fire department and started down that path. So I'm currently a paramedic and going back to school to be a physician's assistant. And I know some questions were about COVID. I've had COVID before. It was in December, so about 5 months ago or so. Last about 10 days, I lost my taste, lost my smell, and I was a little bit fatigued and had a little bit of, bowel irritation, but nothing like, no flare up, nothing major. So, and me personally, like I've experienced, COVID, and it's different for everybody. I'm a 27-year-old healthy, young man. So and I don't know the research behind all the vaccines with people with IBD. So that's where I'm kind of just waiting, for that research to come out before, I get the vaccine, and maybe it is going to cause me flare ups. I don't know. So I'm just gonna, wait and see, where that research goes in the future. So yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. And then I know this has also been touched on, but if there's anything you want to add about like how you balance IBD with social life and your academics or work. And I guess we all talked about like how do you like tell other people about IBD, or, Bree talked about going through accommodations out of school. If there's anything you would like to add with this, and then also with like COVID in this past year, how has that like balance changed for you? Do you feel like it's been like harder for you to like balance certain things or easier? So if anyone would like to answer this question.
I guess I can touch on it since I kind of just talked. My work, so I work pretty much 3 days every 10 days. So I work 24-hour shifts. So we get woken up, like I said, throughout the whole, day and night. Definitely some days after, we get no sleep. We've been running calls all night. I definitely notice, my stomach's maybe a little more uneasy than days I do get sleep. But overall, I have never had to like call off work or, skip work or school. So now that school is pretty much all online, it helps me out. So I'm in 2 classes currently while working full time. But yeah, it hasn't really, my work doesn't get affected by COVID-19 since I have to, respond to people. So yeah, that's kind of my experience. So.
Well, in my experience with COVID-19 and the pandemic is that my entire career was completely evaporated overnight, and I didn't have any performances, any gigs, any teaching, any recessions, nothing going on. And so prioritizing things like my health was something that I could do every single day, all day, every single day, which proved to be very beneficial for me when I ended up in a flare up. And I alluded to it earlier, but there's no way that I could have continued working when I was as sick as I was recently. And so I'm very grateful for the fact that I didn't have to turn down work. Not that I'm grateful for the pandemic, but I'm grateful for the timing of everything. For me personally, it sort of worked to my benefit. But sorry, I'm just reading this slide. In terms of just managing IBD in my workplace, I'm pretty sure strangers on the street know I have IBD at this point, because I am so like open book about it, because I think that it is not just IBD, but just all invisible illnesses and autoimmune diseases are much more prevalent than people realize. And I think the way that we can spread awareness is by talking about it if we feel comfortable. And for whatever reason, I have no problem talking about my bowel habits and bathroom and and rectums and all of that. So, for me, the one way that I worry about it affecting my workplace is just in the fact that people may not hire me because I talk about it, because they know that there's potential for me to be sick and not be able to work. So that is a factor that I definitely worry about sometimes. But kind of going back to what I said about friends, if somebody's not going to hire me for that reason, then I probably don't want the job.
I'll just speak very briefly, but balance is the one enigma that I've never been able to fully wrap my head around. Especially in college, I was never able to find a perfect balance between schoolwork and social life and regular work and self-care, which was like non-existent. But it was definitely tough to balance everything. I think for me, I overcommit and I say yes to too many things, and I'm a people pleaser. That's another topic. But I just felt like it didn't positively contribute to my IBD, because I would constantly be taking on new projects or helping someone, kind of putting them first and just inundating all of my stress. So yeah, the the idea of balance is something that's very difficult and doesn't have a clear and perfect answer. But I think whatever works for you is great. But and then after I left college, I went to work at Disney World. I was an intern there for 8 months before COVID hit. And I definitely felt less stressed because I was just focusing on work and I didn't have all those extracurricular activities and schoolwork to focus on. So I definitely struck a better balance. So I think with age and experience, I'm definitely finding my way with the whole balance thing. But I definitely it just takes time to figure out what works best for you in your life.
Thank you, Bree. And then like Alice, with like what you were talking about and like being so open about it, do you think that like helps with your like, I guess, internalization of like having IBD and or having a chronic illness, that like it kind of is like your motivation to like either for you in your own career or like helping others cope through their own experiences?
Absolutely. I mean, my plans for my future have shifted since my diagnosis and since I started. I share very openly on Instagram primarily, but I also have a YouTube channel that I talk about chronic illness on. And I don't know. I just feel like sharing about it is a way for me to process. Absolutely. And then on top of that, I've managed to build a little community and meet people and connect with others, and in some cases help people to, go see a doctor because they're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. And Alice said that that's not normal. So I went and saw my doctor and I was diagnosed with this, which is like such an honor to be that for anybody, let alone people that I don't even know. So I absolutely use like social media in general, but just openly discussing these issues that I have as a coping mechanism for sure. And if they end up helping others in the process, then that's more than I could even ask for.
Thank you for sharing. I know you have to go soon, so I just wanted.
No, yeah. If I like jump off, it's because my contractor called and they're starting the session early. So I apologize. But if there's any specific questions that are for me, please like send them, and then maybe Nicole can send them to me and I can answer them later or something. But yeah, if I disappear, it's not because I don't want to be here. It's just because my first in-person job is calling.
Thank you. Okay, and I know all of you have talked about stress already, but like any other tips you want to add for like how you manage stress, especially when that stress is coupled with the disease, flare, or pain? And I think this is more like stress related specifically to that you experience, whether you're a student or in your job.
I cannot advocate for therapy more. I love therapy. I think it's so amazing. I think that we need to talk about mental health now more than ever, especially because of the pandemic. I feel like people have dealt with more feelings of isolation and depression and sadness because we're alone. And naturally, like us as humans, us as people, we're supposed to be in a community. And now with telehealth, therapy, it's accessible too. So I feel like for me, the best way I managed stress was definitely therapy, because it was a comfortable space to talk about whatever without judgment. And it is hard to find a therapist to talk about these like heavier and intense topics, because obviously there might not be good chemistry with every therapist that you talk to. But overall, I feel like that was like the best decision I could have done. And I've been doing therapy for years now.
Thank you, Natalie, for opening up about that.
Yeah, so again, like I said, working out is a big, stress relief for me. But so going more the school side though, when I was a junior, I had to kind of have a different mental set going into my classes, going into tests, going into finals weeks, in high school and college. I had to kind of just tell myself, hey, You know, I've studied, I've done everything I can going to this test, you know, and anything else, you know, what's going to happen is going to happen type of deal. And that really allowed me to kind of relieve a lot of the stress that, you know, I was feeling during that time. So over obviously the years, you know, I've definitely trained my mind more than anything to not be stressed in those kind of stressful situations. So, yeah.
For me, yoga practice for sure was a way that I managed my stress and just physical activity. And also, I got into the habit at the beginning of the pandemic with daily journaling, which was never something that worked for me because I always tried to do it at night. And the key for me is to do it first thing in the morning when I'm not going to fall asleep. And that's just something that is like really allowed me to get my thoughts on paper and getting things out of my head and onto like a tangible substance is something that really helps with my stress. I use in like a paper planner still because I just feel like I need to have it out of my brain and out of my phone and on paper. And then making sure, I feel like self-care is such a like trigger word now, and it can like people view it as like taking a bubble bath and getting a pedicure or something, but like whatever it is to you is, I think the utmost importance of self-care is self-compassion. And I think practicing that kind of like just taking care of yourself in whatever way that is, if it is a bubble bath and a pedicure, go for it. I think that's fantastic. Mine is like baking. I really love to bake, so I've been doing a lot of baking over the last year. I think a lot of us have. But I think balance, like Bree was saying, balance and making time for the things that make you feel happy is a great kind of way to sort of counteract stress and anxiety and depression and a lot of things that can come with a lifelong diagnosis like IBD.
Thank you all. And then is there anything you wish you knew when you were first diagnosed, when you were a child or teen, just starting to live your lives with IBD?
A few things come to mind for me. I'd mentioned it before, but I used to call Crohn's and IBD my like little secret. So growing up, I never really told anybody about it except for my family. And then I realized, how am I supposed to, you know, how are my close friends supposed to understand me and be able to empathize or relate to me and support me if I'm not open and honest with them? And I realized I wasn't doing that. So I think with time, I was able to open up more, but I wish I knew when I was just diagnosed that it was okay to reach out and depend on people for support, and that I didn't have to feel this overwhelming weight to just keep it all on myself. So to share that secret with other people, I think would have helped when I was younger. And then I also wish I would have learned more about community and support groups as a teen, and all the amazing resources that are available to me just on the internet. I don't know, I guess maybe I was too shy to reach out or embarrassed and just didn't want to look into resources and community at the time, but I kind of wish I did, because it would have been a lot more beneficial.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're good. Go ahead, Nicole.
Okay, I was gonna ask, Bree, with your experience being like a camp counselor with Camp Oasis, would you say that experience, like with you calling Crohn's like your secret, and by going to that camp and being surrounded by so many other people with IBD, that really like helped you? And any like feedback about the camp or anything you want to share?
Yeah, going into our orientation as counselors, they told us right off the bat, this camp is not about you, it's about the children. And I was like, whoa. And then I realized, like, okay, it's actually a little bit about me, because I was kind of working through my own experience as a child and teen, never having those moments for community and connection like these kids do. And so it was kind of cathartic for me to actually experience it in real time. So I've been a counselor for the past 3 years now, and it's part of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. They're doing a virtual programming this year, but I'll still be a counselor. And so, yeah, it was an amazing experience to kind of relive the community that I never had as a teenager. And it was really the first time I ever met people with IBD and was able to find community as a young adult myself. So I definitely recommend anybody to be a volunteer or to be a patient and attend any type of camp there is.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just don't be embarrassed by it. You know, everybody has little secrets. They have, everybody goes through stuff in life. You know, Crohn's is just a part of you now. You know, you have to go through it every day with it, every flare up. You know, and like we kind of said before, if your friends don't understand it and they make fun of you for it or whatever, then like if you can't find the comical side of that, then maybe they're not really a good friend to you. So definitely had a lot of experiences with friends, making fun of me, but I kind of take it with a grain of salt and kind of give them a little bit of stuff back. So yeah, just kind of don't let it be a darkness to like your day. Just live like every day with it, and and your friends should be there to lift you up. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about this, especially because I was a teen like last year, like this is like super recent for me. I don't know if I brought this up earlier, but I'm only 18. And something I wish I had known, though, even though, it's been like 3 years, I wish I had known that it was okay to like let people go. I think we've talked a lot about how some people may respond negatively and some people may respond positively, and then the ones that respond negatively are usually not your friends. But I so badly just wanted to hold on to everyone because I didn't know it was okay to, that like, you let people go in your life. And when you're a kid, that seems really weird because, I feel like those kind of topics are not really talked about and stuff. And the friends that you kind of develop when you're younger, you want them to stay with you forever. But that's really not how I guess the world works maybe, but it's okay to do that. And something else that I wish I had known was that it was okay to feel angry and to feel sad and to validate those feelings. And oftentimes I always used to get like frustrated on the bright side. And although I do think thinking positively is great, it didn't work for me all the time. For me, what worked was just acknowledging that these are normal feelings that anybody would go through if they just found out they had this illness pretty much forever, and to just acknowledge that that was okay, and it was okay to be angry, and if you had a little outburst, it was okay to apologize and move on. I cannot think about how many times I would get so irritated on prednisone and I would feel horrible about it after, until I realized, something that's been sticking with me forever is that if someone else made that mistake, or if someone else said that, would you treat them as badly as you are treating yourself in your head? And usually the answer is no, right? So that really changed my whole perspective, and I think I really like recommend that for any of, obviously like any of the patients out there, to start thinking like that, and it'll really change your life.
Thank you, Natalie. And thank you everyone for answering this question. And then, how has IBD most positively impacted your life?
So I'd say positively impacted my life. I'd say that, I was kind of quiet when I was in high school, before I was diagnosed. The diagnosis almost like made me like at peace, or I kind of broke out of my shell and became like outgoing, and I guess I finally knew what was wrong with me. So like it was under control for the most part. And yeah, I've kind of carried that confidence in a way throughout, baseball, into my job, and, into relationships with people. So I'd say it's kind of just brought out who I am. And that's kind of how it's affected me most, and taught me really how to handle my stress and and different outlets in life that people have. So just find your outlet. That's my biggest piece of advice. So.
I think for me, it's taught me resiliency. I've had 5 surgeries, and I'm continuing fighting, and it's taught me to just embrace my scars and the things that I've gone through, especially with this past year. I never thought I'd see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I mean, we're all still here. We made it through. So even when we're clinging on to these, dark and difficult times, there's always hope, and there's always going to be brighter days. And so I always like to think that my scars make me stronger. And I'm more passionate now about speaking out about my Crohn's and invisible illnesses and my experience through poetry, through blogs, through songs. And so I really like that aspect, that it's making me stronger, more resilient, and it's helping me to speak out more and just share my experience with other people and find community.
Thank you, Bree. Okay, and so that's like it for our questions. We can take a couple minutes to have people write some questions that they have for our panelists in the Q&A and chat. I know we've been receiving questions throughout the past hour, and our panelists have been great at responding to them. But if there's any other questions, please feel free to write those in, and then we can try to answer them.
Yeah, I think somebody asked a question about peer pressure in high school and college and drugs and alcohol. Me personally, I was never the type of person to give into peer pressure. I think it's more of a personality thing rather than IBD. For me, when I did drink, my parents were very open with allowing me to, drink at a younger age to kind of understand what alcohol does. And I understood at a young age, at like 16, 17, 18, that if I had one beer, no matter what, I was going to feel like, I was going to feel bad the next day. So I've kind of taught myself, I don't drink, I drink maybe once, a month and have like a glass of wine with dinner. I've never done any type of drugs, not even weed. I've never done anything. I think baseball kind of kept me on that path. So yeah, that's, I'd say, going to your question about the peer pressure, I think it's more of just being confident in yourself and knowing what you want to do and what you don't want to do. So yeah.
So I'll give it a couple more minutes to see if any other final questions come in. But I also just wanted to briefly talk about Improved Care Now for our patients that are on this call or their family members that are on it tonight. And so as you heard from our panelists, that community is very important. And if you are trying to find a community for yourself and you are a teenager, you might be interested in the Patient Advisory Council, which is through Improved Care Now. And feel free to take a picture of the QR code and be directed to the website, and you can learn more about it to see if it'd be good for you. But basically it's like a network of other teens with IBD, and the whole idea of Improved Care Now is to improve care for all patients, pediatric patients with IBD. And then Circle is a bi-monthly newsletter that sends out stories about patients with IBD, as well as some tips and resources. And then the Loop blog is patient-written stories about their own IBD experiences. And so feel free to scan any of these QR codes if you're interested in learning more. You can also email ibdcenter@stanfordchildrens.org, and we'd be happy to provide more information about these resources. And then a couple questions came in the chat. Okay, just thank you to everyone. So thank you to our panelists for being here tonight, and thank you to all of our guests. that came in and logged on tonight to watch it. And for those watching the recording later, thank you for sticking through the hour to watch it. And then any final words from our panelists?
I was just going to ask, does anybody have any embarrassing stories they wanted to share?
I have one, but I don't know. I don't, Dylan, do you want to go first or?
You can go. I'll go after you.
Okay, I have this one story now that it's the end. I think it's so funny, but it was actually when I was diagnosed, like the day of, like, I think it was just the unluckiest day. But first of all, like the nurse that was supposed to take me to the car after my colonoscopy and endoscopy, to diagnose me, she never showed up. So I was like waiting there for like 20 minutes, like with no one. And then finally, like I was taken out. So I went home and, I was all like drugged up with the sedatives and like just out of it. And I remember like really desperately wanting like chicken tenders and pancakes. So naturally, like my mom, because she was with me, we decided to order from Denny's. But my mom was just like, oh, we'll get like a car wash and, we'll do like that first, while we're waiting. And so we go to the car wash and our car stops in the middle of the car wash. And I'm like sitting there and I'm like crying and like just like sobbing because like I just found out I had this chronic illness and their car just stopped like right in the middle. And then I don't even think there was like people around either. And so what ended up happening is that the battery just died. So they ended up having to replace it. And by the time like I got back, I was just eating like these like cold like pancakes and yeah, it was embarrassing to like just this random like kid like in the backseat of a car just sobbing while they like people push the car out. So that's probably one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, my story, we were on a road trip for baseball and we were about an hour and a half away from our field and I was kind of just getting over a flare up. So I decided to play in the game, and after the game, I was like, oh, do I go to the bathroom before, we get on the vans to go back or do I wait? And I was like, oh, I'll wait. So I get on the van, I'm getting on the van and I'm about to sit in the my seat and I'm like, nope, I can't wait. And I run out of the van and right in front of the van, there's like tennis courts and like bushes. I just had to go right there, right in front of my whole team and coach. So, and then my coach threw napkins at me and everybody on the van was cracking up. So yeah, that's probably my most embarrassing story. So yeah.
When nature calls.
Yep.
For me, it was when I came back abroad. It was my first day of my spring semester of junior year, and I had the urge to go. And so I left class, and then by the time I came back, class was done and everybody was gone. And my professor came up to me and was really concerned. She said, I just thought you hated my class, and like was so disgusted with the syllabus and dropped the class immediately and left. And I was like, this is a great time to talk about my accommodations and my issues. And then I ended up being her peer advisor later. So it all worked out. But I've never had to drop trow in front of teammates or anything. That's pretty impressive. Nicole? Embarrassing
I'm trying to think of embarrassing. It probably involved running to get back in time to go to a bathroom, but I'm more just like, I feel like it's just weird things there's like funny things to me just by having IBD. And like bathrooms, when I was training for my marathon, I would only run at places where I knew there'd be a bathroom within like one, like every couple miles. So I'm like, I can't like go in nature for the life of me. So I spent a lot of time looking for courses, but in England, when I ran there in a race, they gave you a map and they told you all the bathrooms you can go in. And then I got a card that said that you are in Europe, you have to pay to use the bathroom. And I'm like, this is wrong if you have a disease and you have to pay to use the toilet. And so I ordered a card through some organization in the UK. They sent it to me and I kept it with me. But the race was cool because they gave you a map and this is all the bathrooms that would allow you to go in. So just like weird, funny things that you appreciate if you have a bowel disorder or disease. But I think that's it for tonight. So thank you everyone for being here. And feel free to email Stanford Children's at IBD Center at stanfordchildrens.org if you have any questions for our panelists, and I would be happy to forward those to them and then get back to you with their responses. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.